Okay, this is the housing report for the third quarter for 2019. And one of the questions that we get probably more often than anything in the last, certainly the last 3 or 4 months, has been what's going to happen if there's an economic slowdown or even a recession in housing. And it's a good question. And we don't think that they'll have a significant impact. And the reason we look at historical data to take a look at it to guide us on that. And in Michigan, if you look at the last 6 recessions, 4 of the last 6 recessions, home values actually went up anywhere from 2 to 4%. The only 2 they went down were 2 recessions that were housing-based recessions. Of course, the last one was the one we remember the most and was the most severe of the 6. But in general, if the recession isn't caused by housing, then housing has fared very well in those recessions. And in fact, if there's an economic slowdown, housing will not be the cause of this time either. Housing actually is very healthy in historical terms. Inventories are, although they've been rising, they are lower than historically we've seen. Demand is up, household formations are up, incomes are rising, employment is up, and actually mortgage debt is down. Those second mortgages that were one of the causes of the last recession are almost gone for the most part in the marketplace. So overall, if there is a slowdown, housing will go into that and fare very well. The caveat to that for us being in Michigan, of course, is that we are very auto-related still, and probably the one sector that will be affected by a slowdown is auto. So we might feel it more than the rest of the country, but overall, one of the things to keep in mind is that long-term demographics beat short-term economics. Recessions last usually in months, not years, but you have your home for years, not months. So the reality is that over the next 15 to 20 years, the demographics that really drive demand for housing are very strong. You have all the different demographic groups. You have baby boomers, you have Gen X, you have Gen Y, millennials, and you've got Gen Zs, all moving towards some sort of housing-related action over the next 15 years or so. So if you look at the long-term outlook, you'll see that the strong demand for housing is very strong. There'll be ups and downs, there'll be economic slowdowns, there'll be economic accelerators. All those things will happen, but overall, we think that the long-term outlook is great. And even in the short term, if there's a slowdown, we think housing will fare very, very well for that as well. For the third quarter for Washtenaw County, we can see that inventories have risen, even in the lower price, which is the first time we've seen that in a while. The inventories have been rising in the, say, under $250 market for Washtenaw. But in general, inventories are up. Sales are still reasonable. They were down a little bit in the upper end, but in general, sales are not rising maybe as fast as inventory. So if your home is in the market now, you'll notice that things are moving a little slower, maybe not as many showing appointments. Not as fast a pace for offers. And that's both expected this time of year, but it's also because the market is slowing a little bit in terms of demand. Now, the advantage that Washtenaw has, of course, over really everywhere else in the state of Michigan is that if the rest of the state catches a cold, Washtenaw barely gets a sniffle. So yes, things are slower, and relatively speaking to what you expect to see in Washtenaw, things are slower. So buyers and sellers need to adjust their expectations. Not as slow as the rest of the state maybe, but still the expectations are that first offer that might come in from the seller side. You might want to look at it, negotiate it, don't let it slide by. And if you don't get an offer in the first 30 days, even really for Washtenaw in the first 10 or 15 days, look at condition, look at pricing, look at all where your home fits into the market, and may need to make some adjustments. On the buy side, the opportunities for you are those homes that have been on the market 60, 90 days or more, because there's still a lot of activity for the move-in ready, updated homes. They're still selling in 10 days or less in the market. So now there's an opportunity there, and the homes really aren't overvalued so much in Washtenaw County. They're feeling much higher than they were price-wise 6 years ago, but that's coming off of the trough. So we still think that the values there are still strong in Washtenaw. But the thing to keep in mind is that when the velocity of the market changes, and it's slowing, so it's changed, that's when you need the most counsel, and that's when your realtor can come into play to help you. That's when you need the guidance as to what decisions you need to make, because it's subtle. A 4 or 5% change in activity, a market appreciation rate from 4% to 2% or even to flat in some of the upper end markets requires some strategy and counseling. So take advantage of that and what we can offer you.